Hey guys, Ryan here from Indy Wrestling School, and today we're talking to legendary promoter Joel Goodhart and how to deal with no-shows on your wrestling events. Coming up. Hey guys, thanks for checking out this video. If you're new here, please consider subscribing below. We put out new videos every single week. I was able to sit down with legendary promoter Joel Goodhart, who ran the Tri-State Wrestling Alliance in the early 90s. He was also a promoter for the NWA and did a lot of the Flair-based Philadelphia shows in the early 90s and late 80s, and was able to get a perspective from him that you don't really see anymore. It's kind of like a time that's forgotten, basically, in the wrestling world, but a lot of the principles and a lot of the tactics he used still apply in today's market. And one of the things I wanted to ask him about was, how did he deal with no-shows? And here's what he had to say.
Well, it was weird. I never had a advertised no-show. Okay, there was one show where I was having Jeff Jarrett against Eric Embry, and then those guys pulled out before time. So I said it on the radio, they weren't going to be there. So nobody had a no-show that they went to the show to see Jeff Jarrett, and they missed it. Okay, it's funny because I saw Jeff Jarrett. He came in for Icons for Rob. And Jeff and I were talking, and Jeff's just talking for an hour. He wouldn't let me go, okay? Because we had a great time when we were doing Memphis. But he and Eric Embry, they were part of a program, and they couldn't get out and all that sort of stuff. So I never promoted an honest-to-goodness no-show, okay? And one of the things I told all the guys when I booked them is I've never had a no-show. Now, there was one show, and you're going to ask me which show it was, and I forget it. It was Abdul the Butcher against Manny Fernandez, okay? And Manny calls me up, I'll say 2-3 weeks before the show, and says to me, I got a potential double booking. There's an afternoon show in Jersey somewhere, and do you mind if I work that show and then come into town and do your show at night? I said, I don't care, as long as you're there. I mean, I can't prevent you from working 2 shows. Right. Okay, paydays are important. So he does the show. Well, the guy that was on booked Manny into the main event, which means he couldn't get the hell out of there. So Manny does the show, and now I'm timing my card. I'm trying to stall the damn match for Abdullah. Well, Cactus had been on the show earlier with Eddie Gilbert. So Cactus was in the back. He got all showered up, and now Abdullah comes out, and Manny's still not there. And sure enough, I said to Jack, I said, do me if you got a chance. He goes out to the ring and he starts wrestling Abdullah, okay, which is not an easy job to do. Right. Yeah. Then, 10 minutes into the match, give or take, is when Manny gets there. Manny changed in the car because he knew when he got to we didn't have cell phones. Right. So sure enough, he comes running in. I said, man, you're on. And he just goes running. He didn't even say hello to me. He just ran into the ring, and Manny and Abdullah just started wrestling. Jack went into the back. Wow. So the bottom line is I thought it was integrity. If you're going to advertise somebody, especially with the names I was putting on there.
I thought that was really informative and helpful, and hopefully you thought the same. Now, I did want to include one story that he added later on about Ric Flair and Bruno Sammartino and how he linked them up for a WCW pay-per-view, Halloween Havoc, in the mid-90s. And I know it's not typically what we feature on this channel, but I just felt it was too good not to include here.
When Flair went independent there for a couple weeks, everybody thought that Flair would come work for me.
Did you think he would?
Oh, I knew he would. Okay, and Flair and I agreed on a price. Okay, to do it. But then before it even happened, he got bought up by WCW or whichever the story was. So Flair and I, look, to this day, or back then, we used to talk regularly. Here's a story for you that was actually in the Philadelphia Daily News. Okay? I get a phone call from Flair. Now, keep in mind, Flair had my number. I had his number. Right. Flair calls me up, and he says, we're going to be doing a show in Philly called Halloween Havoc. Now, we know that you know Bruno Sammartino, and we need Bruno to be on the card. He's going to help us draw seats. Can you give me Bruno's phone number? And I said, look, I'm protective of phone numbers. I don't give out anybody's phone number. Now, if you want me to call Bruno and ask for permission, I'll do that. So Flair says, can you do that? I said, let me do one better. I'm going to call Bruno and get permission, but then what I'm going to do, I'll call you back. I'll have Bruno on one line and you on the other, and we'll have a 3-way call. Well, sure enough, we do it. I get a hold of Bruno, and Bruno had worked for me a number of times. I get a hold of Bruno. Bruno says, sure, I mean, with this heavy accent, I'll talk to him. Yeah. So I said, hold on, and I put him on hold, and I dial, and I get Flair on the phone. I'm sitting there. My first god that I grew up, it was Bruno Sammartino. Right. My second god was Ric Flair. Okay, I was always a horseman. Yeah. Okay, now you guys don't know this, but the license plate on my car back in the day was 4HRSMN. 4 horsemen. Nice. Okay? And I used to drive a white Cadillac, and no matter where I went, I'd be driving down, and people would see it, and they would blow the horn, because that's how they knew who I was. It was very cool. But anyway, I'm sitting on the phone, and Flair's talking to Bruno to cut the deal, and they came up with a number, they approved the deal, and I hang up the phone, and I said, that was pretty cool. Now, you don't realize it at the time, that was pretty cool. Yeah. Okay? And every time I saw Bruno, we talked about it. The Philadelphia Daily News, there was a newspaper guy by the name of Dan Geringer that did stories on me. And he came up with an article. He called it "The Gods Are Good to Goodhart." And it was the story about me and Flair and Bruno.
That's crazy.
Is that cool? And I still have a copy of that article. The Gods Are Good to Goodhart. Well, it was weird. When I came out of the business in 92, I ended my run January 18th of 92. That's the last day I was on the radio. And then my daughter was born February 5th, literally 2 weeks later. So my daughter knew nothing about my wrestling days ever. She was born after the fact. When I was into the wrestling, I was 24/7. I actually got out of my financial services career for 2 years and did nothing but full-time stuff. I had the long hair, I wore the cowboy boots, all that kind of stuff. I mean, you know, and it was all the persona. Yeah. And I won't say, I mean, look, I was on the radio, but so I was a personality, okay? Nobody knew who the hell I was, but if you were a wrestling fan, I was it. Oh my God, I was it.
That's all for this video. If you liked it, beat the shit out of the like button, and I'll see you next week right here on Indy Wrestling School.